There's something peculiar happening inside most of us right now. We wake up each morning and almost immediately enter into a war. Not a war with the world outside, though we often convince ourselves that's where the battle is. No, this is an interior conflict, a struggle that unfolds entirely within the confines of your own mind. And here's the strangest part. You're fighting yourself. Most people believe their problem is anxiety, or laziness, or lack of discipline. They look at themselves through the lens of their own judgment and think, if only I could fix this flaw, if only I could eliminate this weakness, if only I could become someone else. But what if I told you the real problem isn't any of these things? What if the real problem is that you're at war with yourself, and this war, this exhausting inner conflict, is based on a fundamental misunderstanding of how life actually works? Stay with me. Consider this for a moment. How often do you find yourself caught in these familiar struggles? I should be working, but I want to rest. I want peace, but my mind won't shut up. I want to be better, but I feel completely stuck. These aren't just passing thoughts. They're evidence of an invisible conflict that runs through your entire day like an underground river. You might not always hear it, but you can feel its current pulling at you, creating a tension that never quite goes away. And here's what makes it all so exhausting. Whichever side you choose, you lose. If you choose to work, you feel guilty about not resting. If you choose to rest, you feel anxious about not working. If you try to force peace upon yourself, you create more turbulence. It's like trying to smooth out water by hitting it with your hand. The harder you try, the more waves you create. Now, let me tell you something that might come as a relief. This struggle you're experiencing, this constant inner conflict, it's not a sign that you're broken. It's not evidence that you're weak or flawed or somehow less than you should be. What's actually happening is far more interesting than that. You see, the human mind has this extraordinary capacity to divide the world into categories. It's quite useful, actually. We divide things into hot and cold, up and down, light and dark. This helps us navigate reality. We can plan, we can organize, we can make sense of the chaos around us. But somewhere along the way, the mind made a rather serious mistake. It began to divide experiences into good and bad. And then it went one step further. It decided that the good things should be kept and the bad things should be eliminated entirely. Think about that for a moment. Your mind essentially declared war on half of reality. It looked at the full spectrum of human experience and said, this half is acceptable, and this half must be destroyed. And then you wonder why you feel conflicted. You wonder why there's this constant tension, this ongoing sense that something is wrong. When you say to yourself, I should be productive, what you're really saying is, the part of me that wants to rest is wrong and must be defeated. When you say, I want peace, but you feel anxiety, your mind interprets this as a failure. The anxiety becomes an enemy to be conquered, a problem to be solved, a defect in your otherwise perfect system. It's as if your mind has drawn a line down the middle of your being and said, everything on this side is me, and everything on that side is not me, is the enemy, is the problem. But here's the thing, and this is crucial to understand. This isn't personal. This isn't about you being particularly neurotic or troubled. This is simply what the human mind does when it misunderstands the nature of reality. It creates opposites, which is fine. But then it tries to eliminate one side of the opposition. The mind treats opposites as enemies, while reality, if you look closely, treats opposites as partners. Let me give you an example that might illuminate this. Imagine you're trying to clap with one hand. You can move your hand through the air. You can make a motion that looks like clapping. You can go through all the motions, but no sound comes out. Why? Because clapping requires two hands coming together. The sound doesn't exist in either hand separately. It exists in their meeting, in their opposition, in the space between them colliding. One hand alone is just air, just silence, just potential without actualization. Your inner conflict works exactly the same way. The desire to work and the desire to rest aren't separate problems that need solving. They're two hands that, when they meet naturally, create the rhythm of a productive life. But when you try to clap with only the productive hand, when you try to eliminate the resting hand entirely, you end up with nothing but exhausting motion and no music at all. You've probably noticed this in your own life. Those times when you've pushed yourself relentlessly, ignored all signals from your body and mind to slow down, to rest, to pause, what happened? Maybe you got sick. Maybe you burned out. Maybe you just became so ineffective that even your work suffered. The resting hand you tried to eliminate found another way to assert itself, usually in a way that was far more disruptive than if you'd simply acknowledged it in the first place. Or perhaps you've gone the other way. Maybe you spent days, weeks, even months avoiding work, telling yourself you'll start tomorrow, next week, next month. And what happened? The guilt built up. The anxiety grew. The working hand you tried to suppress kept tapping you on the shoulder, whispering that you're wasting your life, that you're failing, that you're falling behind. And so your rest wasn't even restful. It became another form of torture. This is the trap. The trap is believing that you must choose one side and vanquish the other. But life doesn't work that way. Life works through the dance of opposites, not through their annihilation. So why does the mind do this? Why does it insist on dividing life into warring factions? Why can't it just relax? Well, the mind is fundamentally a tool for survival. It evolved over millions of years to help you avoid danger and seek safety. And in that context, division makes perfect sense. If a tiger is chasing you, you don't want to contemplate the philosophical unity of predator and prey. You don't want to consider the tiger's perspective or acknowledge the validity of both your desire to live and the tiger's desire to eat. You want to run. You want a clear distinction between safe and dangerous, good and bad, survive and perish. This binary thinking saved your ancestors' lives countless times. When you're in immediate physical danger, you need quick, decisive action. Gray areas get you killed. So the mind developed this capacity for sharp, clear divisions. Friend or foe, food or poison, shelter or exposure. These divisions were, and in many cases still are, absolutely essential. But the modern mind has taken this survival mechanism and applied it to everything. It divides your emotions into acceptable and unacceptable. It divides your desires into virtuous and shameful. It divides your very self into the person you are and the person you should be. And then, naturally, having made these divisions, it declares war. Because that's what the survival mind knows how to do with things it labels as bad or dangerous or wrong. It fights them. It tries to eliminate them. The mind says, anxiety is bad. Get rid of it. So you try. You meditate. You breathe deeply. You tell yourself to calm down. You distract yourself with your phone, food, whatever's available. And what happens? The anxiety often intensifies because now you're not just anxious, you're anxious about being anxious. You've added another layer to the conflict. You've created anxiety about anxiety, and now you're twice as troubled as when you started. Or consider laziness. You wake up on a Sunday morning and feel no particular desire to do anything productive. Maybe your body is tired. Maybe your mind needs a break. Maybe you've been running hard all week and you simply need to recharge. But the mind immediately sounds the alarm. This is wrong. You should be working. You're wasting your life. Look at everyone else being productive. You're falling behind. So you force yourself out of bed. You sit at your desk. You open a book. But your whole body resists. Every cell is telling you it needs rest. But your mind has labeled that need as laziness, as weakness, as something to be overcome. So you sit there, physically present, but mentally absent, caught between the desire to rest and the guilt about resting. And you accomplish nothing except making yourself miserable. And then, to top it all off, you feel guilty for not resting properly and guilty for not working effectively. You've managed to fail at both simultaneously. You've turned what could have been rejuvenating rest or productive work into a joyless struggle. This is the trap. The mind creates a false dichotomy. Either you're disciplined or you're lazy. Either you're productive or you're wasting time. Either you're strong or you're weak. Either you're succeeding or you're failing. And then it demands that you choose the right side and eliminate the wrong side. But here's what the mind doesn't understand. What it can't understand from its limited perspective. These aren't actually choices. They're not separate states that you move between. They're descriptions of a single flowing reality. They're two ends of one spectrum, two poles of one energy, two faces of one life. Think about breathing for a moment. Just notice your breath right now. You inhale, and then you exhale. Now imagine if your mind decided that inhalation is good and exhalation is bad. From now on, it declares, we're only going to inhale. Exhalation is weakness. Exhalation is failure. Exhalation is giving up. We must eliminate it entirely. How long could you survive with this philosophy? About 30 seconds. Maybe a minute if you're stubborn. Before your body forcibly corrects your mind's stupidity. Before you gasp and exhale and inhale again in the natural rhythm that your body knows better than your mind. Yet this is exactly what we do with our emotions, our desires, our entire inner lives. We try to inhale without exhaling. We try to experience joy without sorrow, to work without rest, to desire without discipline, to expand without contracting. And then we wonder why we feel like we're suffocating. We wonder why life feels so hard, why we're constantly struggling, why peace seems so elusive. The answer is simple, though not easy to accept. We're fighting against the fundamental structure of reality itself. We're trying to have one pole of a magnet without the other. We're trying to hear sound without silence. We're trying to see light without darkness. And it simply cannot be done. Now, let's look at something rather fundamental. Something so obvious that we often miss it entirely. The way you might miss your own nose because it's always in your field of vision. The universe doesn't work the way your mind thinks it should work. The universe is not built on the principle of elimination. It's not built on the idea that one side wins and the other side loses. It's built on the principle of complementary opposites. It's built on polarity, on the dance between two forces that create everything between them. Day and night aren't fighting to destroy each other. They're dancing. They're two movements in the same waltz, and without both movements, there would be no dance at all. The day doesn't defeat the night. The night doesn't defeat the day. They simply take turns, each one giving way to the other in an endless rhythm that has been going on since the earth began to spin. Consider light and darkness. You might think of darkness as the absence of light, as something negative, something to be gotten rid of. But actually, darkness is just as essential as light. Without darkness, light would have no meaning. You'd never rest your eyes. You'd never sleep. The stars would be invisible, hidden in the constant glare. Plants couldn't complete their cycles. Your body couldn't restore itself. Darkness doesn't oppose light. It completes it. It gives light a context, a meaning, a purpose. Or think about sound and silence. Music is not just sound. Music is a relationship between sound and silence. If there were only sound, continuous, unbroken sound, it would be noise, an unbearable cacophony that would drive you mad. The silence between the notes is what gives the notes their meaning, their shape, their beauty. A composer doesn't just write notes, they write silences too. They understand that the pause, the rest, the empty space is just as much a part of the music as the notes themselves. In fact, some of the most powerful moments in music are the silences. Think of that pause before the orchestra comes crashing back in. Think of that moment of quiet before the singer's voice returns. That silence isn't absence, it's presence. It's pregnant with possibility, with anticipation, with meaning. The same is true for effort and rest. You cannot have one without the other. A muscle that never rests cannot grow. You could lift weights 24 hours a day, never stopping, and all you would achieve is complete breakdown. The muscle grows during rest. The growth happens when you stop, when you allow the muscle to repair and rebuild itself stronger than before. The rest isn't a break from the effort, it's part of the effort. It's where the integration happens, where the learning solidifies, where the growth occurs. Here's a way to think about it. Imagine a coin. One side is heads, the other is tails. Now, your mind looks at this coin and decides, heads is good, tails is bad. I'm going to remove tails and keep only heads. So you take a knife and you carefully cut away the tail side. You scrape it off. You polish it down. You do whatever you can to eliminate it completely. But what are you left with? A half coin? No. You're left with a piece of metal that's no longer a coin at all. You haven't improved the coin, you've destroyed it. You've turned currency into scrap metal. This is what we do with our lives. We look at joy and sorrow as two sides of a coin, and we think, I'll just keep the joy and cut away the sorrow. But joy without sorrow isn't joy at all. It's numbness. It's flatness. It's a life without depth or dimension. The very thing that makes joy meaningful is that it exists in contrast to sorrow. Just as sorrow is meaningful because we know what joy feels like. Think about the happiest moments of your life. Really think about them. Weren't many of them heightened by some element of sorrow or loss or impermanence? The joy of reunion, because you experienced separation. The sweetness of success, because you tasted failure. The warmth of love, because you knew loneliness. The opposites don't diminish each other. They amplify each other. As I've come to understand it, and I'll put this simply, life is not a problem to be solved, but a reality to be experienced in its fullness. And fullness includes everything. Think about that word, fullness, not perfection, not the elimination of everything difficult or challenging or painful, fullness, the whole spectrum, the entire range of human experience. Fullness includes everything, not just the parts you like, not just the parts that feel comfortable or safe or acceptable, everything. The moments of clarity and the moments of confusion, the times of energy and the times of exhaustion, the feelings of connection and the feelings of isolation, the experiences of success and the experiences of failure, the joy and the sorrow, the light and the dark. When you try to live only on the good side of life, you're attempting something as impossible as trying to inhale without exhaling. You might hold your breath for a while. You might convince yourself that you're doing it right, that you're succeeding, that you're strong for not giving in to the weakness of exhalation. But eventually, reality catches up with you, and you're forced to exhale. You're forced to experience the other side. Not because you failed, but because that's how breathing works. That's how life works. Now, if you're finding this perspective transformative, if you're beginning to see the ways in which you've been unconsciously creating your own suffering through resistance, I want to recommend something to you. It's called Beyond the Shadow, a journey into Carl Jung's core psychology. This ebook explores the unconscious forces that create these internal conflicts, the shadow, the persona, the parts of yourself you've been at war with without even realizing it. Because understanding that you're fighting yourself is one thing. Understanding why you're fighting yourself and how to integrate the parts you've been rejecting, that's another level entirely. You'll find the link pinned in the comments below. And if you want a 30-day practical guide to applying these insights daily, check out Dialogues with the Unconscious. It's designed to help you navigate the inner work, step by step, so you're not just thinking about integration, but living it. Both are linked below. Grab them if you're serious about ending the war within. Now, we come to something that sounds paradoxical, but is actually quite straightforward once you see it clearly. The feelings you resist grow stronger. The emotions you fight intensify. The thoughts you try to suppress multiply and spread like weeds in a garden. It's one of the strange mechanisms of the human psyche, and yet it happens so consistently, so reliably, that you'd think we'd have figured it out by now. Let me show you how this works. Let's say you're feeling anxious. Maybe there's a presentation coming up at work, or a difficult conversation you need to have, or just a general sense of unease about life. Your mind immediately judges this. Anxiety is bad. I shouldn't be feeling this. Strong people don't feel anxious. Successful people don't feel anxious. I need to get rid of this feeling right now. So you try various strategies. You distract yourself by watching TV. You give yourself a pep talk. You tell yourself to think positive, to focus on the good things, to stop being so negative. Maybe you have a drink to take the edge off. Maybe you avoid the situation that's making you anxious. Maybe you just try to white-knuckle your way through it, gritting your teeth and pushing the feeling down. But the anxiety doesn't go away. Instead, it often gets worse. Why? Because you've just added resistance to anxiety. Now you're experiencing two things: the original anxiety about the presentation or conversation, and the anxiety about having anxiety. You're anxious about being anxious. You're worried about being worried. You've doubled your problem by trying to eliminate it. And it gets worse. Because now you might start being anxious about the fact that you can't seem to get rid of your anxiety. What's wrong with me? Why can't I just calm down? Everyone else seems fine. Why am I so weak? And now you've tripled the problem. You've created layers upon layers of resistance, each one adding more weight, more tension, more suffering. Or consider sadness. Something happens that makes you sad. Maybe you lose a job, or a relationship ends, or someone you care about moves away. The sadness is natural. It's appropriate. It's simply your heart responding to loss. But your mind says, don't be sad. Sadness is weakness. Strong people don't feel this way. You need to move on. You need to stay positive. You need to get over it. So you push it down. You put on a smile. You pretend everything's fine. You tell people you're okay when they ask. You distract yourself. Keep yourself busy. Fill every moment so you don't have to feel what you're feeling. But the sadness doesn't dissolve. It goes underground. It becomes a kind of background hum that colors everything else you do. You might not feel actively sad anymore, but you don't feel genuinely happy either. You've traded a sharp, temporary pain for a dull, permanent ache. This is what I mean when I say, and this is important, what you resist persists. What you accept transforms. The moment you stop fighting a feeling, something remarkable happens. The feeling begins to change on its own. Not because you made it change, not because you did some technique or strategy to transform it, but because you stopped preventing it from changing naturally. You stopped holding it in place with your resistance. Imagine you're in a swimming pool and you have a beach ball. As long as you try to hold that beach ball underwater, you have to exert constant effort. Your muscles strain. You focus all your attention on keeping it down. You can't think about anything else. And the moment you relax even slightly, it pops up with even more force, splashing water everywhere. But what happens if you just let it float? If you stop trying to control it, stop trying to force it down, stop trying to make it behave the way you think it should. It floats on the surface. It bobs gently. It doesn't cause you any trouble at all. It's still there. The beach ball hasn't disappeared, but it's no longer a problem. It's just there, floating, harmless. This is exactly what happens with your emotions when you stop resisting them. When you stop trying to push anxiety down, it floats to the surface, and then, naturally, it begins to dissipate. When you stop fighting sadness, it washes over you, and then, naturally, it begins to pass. When you stop suppressing anger, it flares up, and then, naturally, it burns itself out. The emotion doesn't stay forever. It never does. Emotions are like weather patterns. They arise, they peak, they pass. But only if you let them. Only if you stop treating them as enemies to be defeated. Now, I want to be very clear about something, because this is where people often misunderstand. Acceptance is not resignation. Acceptance is not giving up. It's not passivity. It's not saying, well, I guess I'll just be anxious forever. Acceptance is simply recognizing what is, without adding the layer of resistance that turns pain into suffering. There's a difference between pain and suffering. Pain is inevitable. It's part of being human. It's part of having a body, a mind, a heart that cares. Suffering is optional. Suffering is what happens when you resist pain, when you fight it, when you add the story that it shouldn't be happening, that you're weak for feeling it, that something is fundamentally wrong. Acceptance is the willingness to experience pain without creating suffering. It's the willingness to feel anxiety without being anxious about anxiety. It's the willingness to feel sadness without telling yourself a story about how you shouldn't be sad. It's the willingness to let the beach ball float instead of trying to hold it underwater. And here's what's remarkable. When you stop fighting your emotions, they begin to inform you. Anxiety, for example, is often trying to tell you something. Maybe it's telling you that you're unprepared. Maybe it's telling you that you care deeply about something. Maybe it's telling you that you need to slow down and pay attention. But you can't hear what anxiety is trying to say if you're too busy fighting it. Sadness is often trying to tell you that something mattered to you, that you loved something and now it's gone. That's not weakness. That's proof that you're capable of love. Anger is often trying to tell you that a boundary has been crossed, that something isn't right, that you need to stand up for yourself or for someone else. These emotions aren't your enemies, they're messengers, but you've been treating them like invaders, and so you've been missing their messages. So what's the way forward? How do you stop fighting yourself? How do you end this war? It starts with awareness. Simply becoming aware of the conflict. Noticing when you're resisting. Noticing when you're trying to eliminate one side of the coin. Noticing when you're trying to clap with one hand. You don't have to fix it. You don't have to change it. You just have to notice it. And then, gently, you can begin to soften. You can begin to ask yourself, what if this feeling doesn't need to be fixed? What if it's just here, and that's okay? You can begin to breathe into the tension instead of tightening against it. You can begin to make space for the full spectrum of your experience, not just the parts you've deemed acceptable. This isn't easy. I'm not going to pretend it is. Because you've been conditioned your entire life to believe that certain feelings are bad, that certain desires are wrong, that certain parts of you are unacceptable. You've been waging this war for so long that peace might feel unfamiliar at first. But it's possible. It's possible to live without being at war with yourself. It's possible to experience anxiety without adding anxiety about anxiety. It's possible to feel sadness without creating a story about how you shouldn't be sad. It's possible to rest without guilt and work without resentment. It's possible to breathe in and breathe out and recognize that both are necessary. It's possible to clap with both hands and hear the music. So here we are. The war within isn't a sign that you're broken. It's a sign that you've been taught to divide what was always meant to be whole. You've been taught to resist half of reality, and then you wonder why you feel conflicted. But now you know. Now you see that the opposites aren't enemies, they're partners. They're two hands clapping, two sides of a coin, two poles of a magnet. And when you stop trying to eliminate one side, when you stop fighting yourself, something remarkable happens. The tension dissolves, the struggle eases, the music begins. Not because you forced it, but because you finally stopped preventing it. So stop fighting. Stop resisting. Stop trying to be only one half of who you are. Let yourself be whole. Let yourself be full. Inhale and exhale. Work and rest. Feel joy and sorrow, because that's not weakness. That's life in its fullness. I'll see you in the next one.